Welcome to episode 219 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I'm fully under the control of the United States government, and I thought you should know.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of the podcast that you're listening to. And I will not say anything about the government on this episode because, they do some shit.
Hey, you remember that Ronald Reagan guy?
Hey.
Now he can't help but talk, so this will be good. All right, joining us today, Todd Keisling is here. Todd, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you, man. I think the first time I ever hit you up to do this was like a year and a half ago. And then, my scheduling is always crazy. And
I think it was even longer than that, really.
Was it? It probably
what is
was.
Time anyway?
I don't know. I gave up on time in like 2019, I think. So
Same.
now I have no concept ever. Everyone asks me stuff and I'm like, oh, that was like last week. Wait, no, July. It's all the same to me. Anyway, why don't you tell our listeners a bit about yourself and what you have going on, man?
Sure. So I may or may not be Todd Keisling. I can neither confirm or deny that. I am a horror writer, an author of several books, which is why I'm here today, I think. I could be held against my will, too. For the listeners, you can't see this, but they're holding me in an underground bunker in an unnamed facility somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains. Please help. What? Oh, sorry. Wrong meeting. Yeah. So, I write horror stories. I write horror novels. And most recently, my new collection just came out at the end of September. It's called Cold, Black, and Infinite: Stories of the Horrific and Strange. It features an introduction by Bram Stoker Award-winning author John Langan, author of The Fisherman, which if you haven't read that, you need to unfuck that right now.
Definitely.
And I'm here to talk about a horror film that I feel like doesn't get a whole lot of appreciation. And
I hadn't even heard of it. So
No.
I'm when you say underappreciated, definitely. But I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead. I was just agreeing.
I was going to say the title, or do you guys want to do like a special fanfare for that?
They don't get to know the title. It'll be beamed directly into their brains later. 779553.
Well, they'll be receiving.
They'll be
honest.
receiving. Thank you.
They'll be open to receiving. Nothing gets beamed in.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead. Tell them the title.
Okay, so
I'll be
we're
good.
talking about the severely underrated, in my opinion, Banshee Chapter, a horror film from 2013, written and directed by Blair Erickson. Let me scroll down on my IMDb cheat sheet. It stars Katja Winter, Ted Levine, and Michael McMillan. So,
Hell yeah.
I first encountered this film one day while I was home from work sick, and my wife was at work and I was bored, so I put this on Netflix and it scared the hell out of me. And movies don't often do that, especially for a horror writer. You kind of desensitize yourself, or you're so used to the tropes, you're so used to the plot pattern that you kind of predict what's going to happen, and then it loses all of its magic. I consider that an occupational hazard. So, but this one though, Banshee Chapter, just surprised the hell out of me. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like the first time I saw it, it legitimately frightened me. And that hasn't happened since I was a child. So
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's rare for me, but like you said, it's one of the hazards of doing this. But I also feel like you know, I've said this before, but I got to the point where it's not even predicting what's happening. It's like you're counting down to exactly when it'll hit, what beat will hit here, and this. I mean, it still follows a normal story structure, but no, man, this did freak me out, and yeah, I love that you made us watch this. It didn't fully scare me, probably because I read spoilers for everything, and so I knew what was coming. But like, it really got to me. There were some great scenes, especially like once you see the entities and stuff like that. That one scene where she stops for the gas container,
Yeah.
and then the creature standing there, beautiful. That was a jump scare I did not expect, which seems really rare these days.
So, like, I've been thinking about this movie all week leading up to this, and I watched it last Monday, I think, just to kind of refresh myself with it. And something that has kept me going back to this movie over the years is its jump scares, in my opinion, are far more effective than most jump scares in film that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep going back to it because I'm just trying to figure out why. Because, like, even though I know those jump scares are coming, with this movie in particular, they still get me. And, I think it's got to do with a lot of the dread that is built up throughout the film. Like, that dread does not let go. I don't know what you guys think about that, but
Yeah, I was gonna say you always have that tone or that sense that nothing good is gonna happen.
no.
You're not waiting for that bright, sunshiny ending. Walking off, away from the station or away from the site. I never saw this movie before, and when I watched it, obviously before we recorded, I just thought about not just the way in which the monsters, the beings, the entities kind of manifest themselves, or at least how you can kind of see them, but the depths, and this is the scary part, is the real world stuff. The depths at which the US government, or any government for that matter, is going to do shit just because they can. I mean, even though the program itself was illegal, but because they have the ability to do those things, and the fact that, I mean, all they were doing was continuing what the Nazis did in the concentration camps. Like, it's like, oh, here's a good, I'm sorry, I don't. Let me do a disclaimer. Don Guillory in no way is saying the Nazis did anything good. This is Don playing the character of just regular man in gray flannel, gray suit. Okay, so let's go ahead.
Trying not to have a repeat of the Batman Returns episode.
Oh God, never again, please. So you imagine like some straight-laced government guy saying, the Nazis were doing this stuff, and we need to go ahead and do it with our people. It's not a good fucking idea. And then you bring the Nazis over to continue the research. So
it's the whole purpose of Operation Paperclip was to get access to their knowledge. And I mean, we wouldn't have gone to the moon without it. It's sad to say. But yeah, man, MK Ultra, that's some freaky shit. And like, for some reason, I don't know if this is urban legend or not, but I remember hearing that Ted Kaczynski was part of, like, he was a subject of the MK Ultra experiment. I don't know if that's true. I want to believe that's true because that would make so much more fucking sense. But anyway, that's probably a whole other discussion for another time. But so before we jump into like the plot and everything, just the synopsis here that IMDb gives you on Banshee Chapter is, quote, journalist Anne Rowland explores the disturbing links behind her friend's sudden disappearance, an ominous government research chemical, and a disturbing radio broadcast of unknown origin. So before we jump into what happens in the film, like this movie is like a mishmash of different styles. Like going into it, you think it's almost going to be found footage, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Because I found footage is probably my, you know, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Guilty pleasure. Found footage is my guilty pleasure. Stupid found footage movies, and by stupid I mean like just the dumbest reasons of why we can't put the camera down and run for our lives. Right. It's up there with like ghost hunting shows that are so dumb and fake, but they're entertaining for some reason because they are dumb and fake. That's sort of, that's kind of my high calorie intake, so to speak. It's I find it filling. It's not good for me, but I find it filling.
I love that.
Yeah,
I thought it's like a jumble of genres too. Like
it's sci-fi.
So many things going on. It's great.
And what I think is brilliant is that it's basically a retelling of Lovecraft's short story From Beyond.
Yep.
And for the listeners who just perked up at me saying that, imagine if the Tillinghast resonator from Beyond was a government structure that was outputting a signal that turned our bodies into doorways for something on the other side to come through. Now, if that doesn't pique your curiosity, I don't know what will, and they wrap it around the mystique of MK Ultra. So what if the government were experimenting with a drug that actually occurs naturally within the human brain? That would be DMT or dimethyltryptamine, if you want to get technical about it. Let's suppose the government synthesized a new form of DMT from the actual chemical produced in the brain of a living or formerly living subject. What if they're extracting it from a dead body and ingesting it in a live subject, and they start to get in touch with something on the other side? So let's take that. So you got your sci-fi elements, you've got government conspiracy, and then just to put some icing and cherries on top of this amazing cake, they throw in fucking numbers stations. Number stations, which when I first saw this, I had only just learned about and had gone down the rabbit hole of number stations for like a week. And then I see this movie having no idea what it's about at all. I mean, it was a Netflix description, so it told you nothing.
Yeah.
So I put it on and like number stations, DMT, MK Ultra, Lovecraft. Wait, there's more. Hunter S. Thompson.
Right?
Yeah.
Or a Hunter S. Thompson-like figure in the form of Thomas Blackburn, who is played by the incredible Ed fucking Levine.
And he was amazing.
If that name does not sound familiar to any of the Luddites out there, he's probably most famous for his portrayal of the serial killer Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs.
Oh man.
Like you're throwing all this into like this amazing just jumble of things that should not work together, but they do. They work so beautifully together.
That's what I was going to say. On paper, this sounds insane. And then you watch it, and it's not only a good story, like it flows flawlessly, and it's captivating. And then you have Ted's character who, like, if you told me he could do something weirder than Buffalo Bill, I'd be like, I don't know, man. And this is like in a totally different direction. Like it's not like you can see the similarities, you know? God,
Like
just gorgeous.
And he even gets like the speech patterns down, you know, like when he's when he and Anne are in his office and like well, no, it's before that. It's when they're in the kitchen and the other chick, the chemist lady is talking to them, and she's basically pouring out the shots of this chemical, and he just shoots it, and he's like, foul fucking venom. It's such an over the top portrayal of Hunter S. Thompson, and yet it's accurate.
Right.
Because what was Hunter S. Thompson if not completely over the top in every way?
Yep. Well, and you mentioned earlier, like the dread never lets up, the terror never lets go. And even introducing his character, like it's fun and it's setting up the weirdness of him and all these things, but it is adding so much to that dread and tension. This guy is not safe. This guy is so far from safe, it's ridiculous. You know, and that's the stuff the public knows about this guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was fascinated how you can use that for character building. But yeah.
So how do you guys want to do this? Do you want to run through just the plot from point A to point B, or
we were hoping that you would just cover the whole thing and we could sit here, but
Andrew?
No, Don, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, we skipped over probably, in my opinion, his best line, which I want to use one day if I ever become that famous author.
Can I guess? Line was? Like, oh, have you read my new book? The one called "Go Fuck Yourself."
It's a beautifully written, masterfully delivered line where it's kind of like, I know you're full of shit. No, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to the press. Bye.
and even every writer would be like, yay.
That's great.
And even the fact that she still thinks, I mean, what you're talking about with them meeting, that she still thinks like, yeah, I can get over on this guy. I can get over on this guy. I can pretend to be somebody I'm not. And he's like, I fucking know who I know you. I'm not dumb. I know what you're here for. This is not your real name. Let's go for a ride. You know, let's take a trip in more ways than one.
So since I have completely derailed this already by talking.
No, you haven't.
No.
So the movie starts with Michael McMillan, who, if I'm not mistaken, he played the Reverend in the second season of True Blood.
Mm-hmm.
He is the subject of this investigation that his friend and possible lover, Anne Rowland, is doing into his disappearance. He basically was writing a book, and he was about MK Ultra, and he was focusing on a specific chemical experimentation with a chemical called dimethyltryptamine 19 or DMT 19. And for the purposes of this book, he wanted to ingest the chemical and, you know, have a more accurate understanding of its properties and what it does to a person. So he and his buddy are out at this house, and he has procured a vial of genuine DMT 19. He takes it. Nothing happens, but his friend is still trying to fuck with him because he's like, you look so weird, dude.
Yeah.
And I jumped ahead of myself again, actually. There's the very, very beginning where it's cutting up actual interviews with scientists once the media found out about the experimentation in the 70s, talking about how they didn't really think about the impact it would have on the populace and what have you. It cuts in with James Hirsch, his character, cuts in with him talking about a particular chapter in his book that involves a shared hallucination that all of the participants of the experiment experienced. Particularly, they all felt something, they all experienced something, and they all described it the same way. And that explains why the movie is called Banshee Chapter. But they never expound upon that.
Right.
They instead let the events let you piece it together yourself, which, a mad respect for the filmmakers there, because Hollywood tends to dumb all that shit down and just hit you in the face with it. They opt not to do that.
Yeah, you would normally get that flashback scene where the one guy puts it all together for us,
Yeah.
I'm so glad we didn't get that.
Or even Anne like going through his stuff and finding something more than what she found. Or going back, I almost said going back to Hunter S. Thompson's apartment. Going back to Blackburn's house and like finding something that linked him to, because that would be something that we just look at as, she wouldn't know that information. She wouldn't know any of that stuff. She shouldn't be able to know any of that stuff. But I love the use of the quote unquote government videos that some of which have been found. But what's really cool is they get into the truth, or I should say the history of what took place, which is not all of the information was available, because I think it was the head of the CIA or whoever's heading up the operation decided to shit can so many of the documents, to where they were operating from 1953 until 1973, and there's no telling how many people they experimented on, because it was all about, or at least the idea was all about mind control, but not in the sense that, no offense to Joe Rogan or the Joe Rogan fans, but not in the sense of, oh, this is going to be something that we can pacify the populace with. It was more an issue of, let's see if we can use this for interrogation. And let's see if we could affect somebody to where they could unwittingly do something that we convinced them to do, that part of letting them in. And the first thing I thought of, excuse me for this, James, but I got to bring it up, the classic film Naked Gun 33 1/3. Because that is the plot of the movie, was to get someone to become an assassin without them knowing. But instead of a mind control drug, it was like a bracelet, a radio frequency that was sent through a bracelet, which again, brilliant. I mean, looking back on it now, I'm like, shit, that is brilliant. But the reality was, we're trying to come up with one way to get nice little grandma to go and kill the mayor, or go into another country and you get a close confidant to kill the president, and you overthrow the government that way. So it becomes the CIA's way of, we're not going to spend a shitload of money to do this stuff that we want to be able to do, but we're not going to be on the up and up about it either. But it's Cold War at its finest, because you end up having the fear that is being done with the Koreans, that's being done with the Chinese, the Russians, and any other type of adversary on the planet. But we have to do it because they might have it. But it's beautifully done and included to show how, again, I almost said Hunter S. Thompson, how Blackburn is part of the experiments. He knows something about it, but then you also get the impression that maybe he doesn't know anything about it at the same time,
Yeah, I think he definitely knows more than he's letting on, I think.
Right.
But we find out at the end, that a lot of it he doesn't know.
Right.
Because, for reasons we'll get to. So James Hirsch ingests DMT-19. And nothing happens for a while. He's just chilling out with his buddy. And they're up in his office talking about things. And, his friend puts his hand on James's shoulder. And I forget exactly what he says. They're in the middle. They're having a conversation. and they start hearing something playing on the radio from downstairs. Now, were you guys aware of number stations before this film?
I didn't know of them.
Okay.
I
James?
didn't know.
I've heard of them a little, mostly because of my buddy Vincent Cava, who is obsessed with that kind of stuff. So I've heard it in passing, but I didn't know
Okay.
a lot about it going into this.
So number stations, like the one that's actually playing in the film is an actual number station recording. Like you can find that online. There's a website, and I forget, what it's called. You have to Google it. But there's like a website that has a repository of like recordings of all the various number stations that are known throughout the world. And some people speculate that they are basically coded messages for spy networks, but which is probably likely. But at the same time, we don't know for sure what the hell they are.
All right, I have a theory.
Okay, let's hear it.
It's just somebody reading off pi.
I mean, that would be hilarious.
Because that would be the most innocent response. It's just somebody is just reading off pi.
I like that theory. It's something totally innocuous. There's no government behind it. It's just a bunch of people who really like pie.
Hey, Todd, if he gets too out of line, I can kick people out of the conversation or
No, it's
you
fine.
just let me know.
Wow. I want to hear more like this, actually.
Wow.
So, Don, spotlight on you. You're up, my friend. You've been waiting this for your whole life.
All right, my question to either one of you is this. Would you do it? Would you take the DMT, let's say it's in a safe, controlled environment? And I don't mean like a research facility or hospital. I mean, as far as like you're with people that you trust, because it seems that's the way for James. It's kind of like, I need you to record what's doing because I don't trust myself to take the notes objectively and as far as what the experience is. But if you were in a safe, controlled environment, would you take it? And if so, why?
So if I'm in James's shoes and I'm doing research on this experimental drug, and I'm particularly interested in the experience of what these people were, privy to by ingesting it, I'm going to go with no.
Okay.
Because, I mean, that, like hallucinogenics, in general, I mean, you can have a great trip or you can have a bad trip. And it sounds like all these people were consistently having bad trips.
Right? I was going to say I would probably convince one of my friends to do it and let me take the notes. That seems like a much more me thing to do. I would be like, look, I don't know if there's alcohol in this, and I'm coming up on 12 years, so I'm going to need you to try it, buddy.
Wow.
Nobody takes notes the same way I do. I'm an obsessive outliner, so I'm going to need to be the one writing this down.
Okay.
What about you, Don? Are you shooting it or not?
No, not at
No.
Well, at this point in my life, no. I think 65, 70 years old, maybe I would do it then. Maybe. Because so many things would be taken care of. But as far as where I am now, seeing and hearing those experiences of somebody having a bad trip, and then they are altered for the rest of their life in some cases. No. But
if we're talking different ages, then from like 23 to 30, I'm definitely shooting it. So
now I would say that if I had would have had the opportunity to drop acid with the real Hunter S. Thompson, yes.
Okay.
Totally would have. I would totally gone for that ride, however terrifying and strange it might have been.
That's my Willie Nelson rule. Like I've never smoked pot, but I'm like, man, I know if for some reason I crossed paths with Willie Nelson, I'm not saying no. Same, I would say Snoop, but he just said he stopped smoking, so he's just going to go to the edibles and stuff. But I think if it were a certain person, probably. Yeah. But yeah, if it was Hunter S. Thompson, I'm sitting there, I'm like, let's do it. What's safe for somebody, a newbie? What's safe for a newbie? Don't give me what the hell you're taking.
No, he'd drop you, head first into the deep end. He wouldn't go safe for a newbie.
Oh yeah, they'd be pulling out that suitcase from Fear and Loathing.
Yeah.
And be like, "Oh, this is great for beginners."
Yes.
As your return, I suggest you take this.
Uppers, downers, zippers.
That's the end of Dawn.
Yep. Goodbye, Dawn. He's scraping him off the floor in a few days.
Yeah, the floor outside the casino.
Yeah.
We don't know how he got on the roof.
What?
I said, we don't know how he got on the roof.
That's true.
And
So where were we? So they hear the number station playing from the radio downstairs. They go downstairs, and it's this little girl it's playing this bit of music, and this little girl starts speaking. She just starts counting numbers, and I forget what language it is. I think it's German. It could be German. I don't know. Or Swiss. And then James starts to just kind of go blank-faced, and he's like, oh my God, it's coming toward the house. And the friend's like, what's coming toward the house? And then you see a shadow pass in front of the window, and it cuts out. Chaos, screaming. You don't know what's happening. And then after all the interference clears up, we're moving out. We're outside. We're walking down this path. There's this strange orange goo on the ground, and he turns the corner, and holy fuck, there's James. Except his face is sagging like they've thrown water on a painting, and there's black ichor dripping out of his eye sockets and his mouth. It looks like he's had a stroke. And there's this awful fucking scream. And it goes black. What the hell just happened? Well, kids, I'm glad you asked. We're going to find out. Enter. No, before we get to Anne, we get a clip of the friend, James's friend, in being interrogated by the cops. And the sheriff's like, I'm going to fuck your world. Because what he's saying doesn't make sense. They ingested the chemicals, something happened, and now James is missing. And they're trying to make the friend as the fall guy. He's the killer. And then we come in, Anne comes into the picture. She's telling us about...
1 second.
Sure.
I was just thinking, can you imagine if even in a movie or in real life, if there was a cop that just believed this shit? Like, I've never seen a scene like that. I think that'd be so great. Like, you're like, oh man, we took some stuff, some aliens showed up, and the cop's just like, oh, those fucking aliens again?
Your house too?
Well, I know exactly why cops never believe it, but I don't know. I would just love to see it totally reversed. I think it'd be great if they just believed the most insane shit. Like, you're covered in blood holding the knife, and you're like, oh no, it was like this when I showed up. And the cop's like, oh, okay.
That would be hilarious, actually.
Did you happen to see the assailant?
Oh, man.
Sounds like we're going back to another Naked Gun movie there.
Wow. I haven't seen the Naked Gun movies in so long.
I have a feeling they're not going to hold up, but...
You're probably right.
I mean, maybe not just because of one person in the movie, but,
Is he the killer? Oh, anyway.
Not that movie.
So Anne is a friend of James's from college. They're both writers. She went into journalism. He kind of went into being a, writer. We don't really know what kind of writer he is, but he's writing this book about MK Ultra. So I like to think of him as John Krakow. This is his into thin air moment. And she basically wants to look into what happened to him. she's trying to piece together what happened, because it's kind of insinuated throughout the film that they might have had a on again, off again relationship of some sort. And we even have a scene with Anne later on in the film where she's like talking to herself and trying to figure out, was I in love with him? Was I not? So that's her motivation. She wants to find out what happened to her friends. Now she goes to the house. She's kind of looking around, looking through his notes. How she gets in the house, we don't know. I like to think that she just kind of spirited her way in there. We don't know if it's a rental. Did he own it? Who cares? And she's looking through his notes. She comes across a picture of the two of them in one of his notebooks. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, because I am remembering this as I go. I could have remembered incorrectly, or if I missed something. But while she's there, she hears something like rattling around downstairs, and it's kind of like one of those false scares. You think something's going to happen, but it doesn't.
Right. And
she finds a letter that James received, signed about, well, it's a letter from the people who sent him the chemical, and they signed it, friends in Colorado. This is an important plot point. Prior to this, when James and his friend are just talking, and James is getting, kind of amping himself up to take this DMT-19, the friend asks him, where did you get this? And he said, it's from some friends in Colorado. So we jump back to Anne in her office. And correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Does she go out into the desert first, or does she... Yeah, she goes out into the desert first, right?
To meet with Blackburn, or...
No, before that. It's before she has the meeting with her boss at the Journal.
I don't remember. I'm not sure.
Actually, yeah, she does.
So she hooks up with the radio guy.
Mm-hmm.
He sets her on the path of where to go to hear the number station. Okay, so she hits...
Yeah, because he was like a shortwave radio
expert who had ties to the NSA, and he doesn't want to talk about that. But basically, she goes and talks to this expert, and he hooks her up with a CB radio, or shortwave radio, for her car, so she can go out to the desert and find this broadcast as it's occurring. And so she does that. She drives out in the middle of nowhere on her own, hopefully with mace and a knife or a gun, and drives out to the middle of nowhere and kind of sits there and waits till dawn. It's like 3 or 4 a.m. to get this broadcast. And as we see her kind of talking to herself, there's some monologuing a little bit about her relationship with James Sabata, of course. And
yes,
boy, that would be
please.
funny. You guys should totally like recut the portions of that movie so that like she's going out to the desert to listen to the podcast. And she keeps talking about James.
That's right. I hated him in school, but I guess I'll listen to this because Todd's on the show. That's what she would say.
It's true. It's true. Anne and I go way back. So she's out there. She picks up the broadcast finally. The little girl starts talking and, counting off the numbers. And for reasons that I don't understand, for the 7 or 8 times I've seen this movie, she gets out of the car.
Yeah.
And just kind of wanders into the desert with her flashlight and like, hello? Is anybody there? And she sees a figure in the distance with her flashlight. And we don't even really, it's so fast, we don't really get to see, but it's enough to startle us and startle her. And she runs back and drives the fuck out of there like any sane person would. Then we get to...
that scene was probably one of my few complaints because she could have easily like sat on the hood of the car doing all this stuff so that it would feel more organic when it happens. Because it was so fast when she gets out of the car. And and maybe they're there, I don't know, but maybe if we'd gotten like more shadows or something around the car, but this was like my one and only. So I'm not degrading the movie by any means, but it's just the one point I was like, yeah, that was kind of forced. I don't know. It was still good.
Well, I totally agree. It doesn't make sense to me either, and it's by no stretch a perfect film. I personally, I think that I get the impression that there were things left on the cutting room floor, and I have to wonder if they cut something earlier on to lead her to get out of the car. Probably because it might have given the audience a scare earlier on, and then the later scare of the guy appearing in the dark had less impact.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah.
In any case, she sees scary boogeyman in the desert, and she books it out of there. And then she's back at her office the next day, and she's talking to her boss, right? This is where she meets with the boss, and she's telling her boss about, he's got this letter, it's signed Friends from Colorado, and the boss is like the book, you know it? And Anne, of course, does not know it. So her boss, who has been eating a salad, sets it down on Anne's desk, and while her boss walks away, Anne just plucks a piece of lettuce out of her boss's salad and eats it herself because fuck you, boss lady. And her boss comes back with a book called Friends in Colorado by Thomas Blackburn. And then we get this fun little vignette that cuts away, totally different tone and everything, of basically a primer on who the fuck Thomas Blackburn is in the world of this film. And he is basically the stand-in for Hunter S. Thompson. I mean, they've talking about how, like, we see him, I guess his girlfriend or his wife is sitting by the pool. There's bubbles coming up from the pool's bottom. And there's a guy on the roof of the nearby roof shooting at something with a shotgun. And that's Thomas Blackburn. He's on the roof. The person in the pool who's, slowly drowning is a journalist who pissed him off. Basically, Thomas Blackburn is, he was a counterculture voice, and he wrote a bunch of books, and they're all very Hunter S. Thompson named, like Generation of Swine and stuff like that. And it recounts like his brushes with the law, and he's kind of just very crazy. He's he's a powder keg, and they even mimic the real life incident where Hunter S. Thompson, I think he was like he was done the press junket for Nixon's reelection, and he basically told all the people at the reelection party that he had spiked the punch with acid.
You got 18 minutes.
Yeah. Like, so in the film, security is escorting him away, and he just says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to let everyone know that the acid in your punch will begin to kick in about 18 minutes? 18 minutes." And everybody freaks out. Of course, it's a lie. There is no acid in the punch, but, it doesn't matter. That's Thomas Blackburn. So then we get to Don's favorite line from the whole film. So it's late at night. Anne is trying to reach Thomas Blackburn. And she calls him up. She's very honest about who she is. And he asks her, "Have you read my latest book?" She says, "Which one?" He says, "The one called Go Fuck Yourself." And he hangs up on her, which is a line that, like Don, I myself would love to use at some point in the future. So when that doesn't pan out, there's a detail I skipped over because I forget exactly where it falls up to this point. But basically, she has acquired a tape. This might have been from James's place. I don't remember exactly. she acquires a tape of the MK Ultra experiments. Some of the and there's a section of it that's missing. That's important. But basically, we get to see some of the experimentation, and they have this young man. It's black and white. He's in a, confined in a room behind glass, so they can observe him. They tie him down, they inject him with the drug, and he starts like talking about like they can see me, and then he goes silent, and you hear this voice, presumably him, whispering what is essentially the molecular makeup of the chemical. And the gist is that's where they get that's where they first learn of the drug, is not from I'm assuming that this molecular makeup is actually like how they're able to synthesize it themselves. That was my takeaway. Again, it's not entirely clear because they've already injected him with something to get him to, have this reaction. So anyway, there's a jump scare there. And there's some, footage missing, and we see them like using a bone saw to cut into a corpse's skull, and they're, withdrawing, DMT straight from this woman's, pineal gland. And happens after that.
Oh gosh, because I'm looking at my notes and then the plot, but really what ends up happening after that is you've got Anne going out there to go meet Blackburn, which again gives us another fun exchange.
Yes,
upon fun exchange, which again he's
before we get to that point
part.
though. Before we get to that point, she has another conversation with her boss, where she tells her boss what is on the tape, and they send it off to a forensics guy to see if they can reconstruct the missing footage because the tape is damaged. She then tells the boss that I've got an idea on how to get to Blackburn. That's when she goes out to this bar, and she's basically waiting for him to show up, and he comes in, says something kind of racist to the bartender. I'm not going to repeat it. And then talks about how he was arrested this morning, just like yesterday, for peeing on his front lawn. Like, I've been peeing in the same spot for 20 years. So she comes over, basically starts schmoozing him. She had emailed him under a false identity, plays herself off as a struggling writer who's trying to write a romantic psychedelic story about the narco wars in Mexico and these two lovers who want to experiment with various chemicals and whatnot. And so they start talking about writing a little bit, which, is always going to get an A+ from me. And he's like, you know what I write? Pornography. 50 shades of shit. I love that line. So they basically have this conversation, and ends up, Thomas Blackburn invites Anne back to his place for a weekend of experimentation because he has a friend who's coming over who happens to be a chemist who has synthesized DMT-19.
It's almost like he was on to her plan.
Yeah, a little bit.
Can I just say, I love Anne's confidence that this plan's going to work.
Right.
Like when she looks at her boss, she's like, oh, I know exactly how to get him. It's just, I don't know. There's something so funny about it to me when it probably shouldn't be overly funny, but it's just like, this did not go well for you at all.
Yeah. It all just kind of goes a little bit too perfectly, and which should have been the first tip off that something is wrong. But, Anne is the somewhat naive journalist, which she probably shouldn't be given her chosen career or profession. So they end up going back to Blackburn's place, which looks fucking awesome, by the way. I don't know if you guys stayed through the credits, but they actually like credited the person who designed the interior of his house. Just with all the different, the artwork and the books and how everything's positioned and stuff. It looks really cool. It's a very cool mise en scène, as they say in the film world. And so they end up meeting this girl. I think her name is it Callie? Yes, it's Callie. They meet Callie. Callie is Thomas's friend. Callie is a chemist. And they're talking about this experimental drug. And basically Thomas Blackburn shoots it. No problem. Foul fucking venom, he says. And follows him back up to his office. And still has the shot because she doesn't want to take it, obviously. So while Thomas is getting her a drink, she semi-discreetly pours the shot of DMT into his wastebasket, which obviously he notices because it's Thomas Blackburn. The Thomas Blackburn. And he starts talking to her about, her thoughts on liars and all this stuff, and that's where he comes clean. He knows who she really is,
right?
And he knows she just dumped the DMT, and that's why he says he put it in her drink that she has just consumed. And so she's pissed off, freaking out. She runs out of the room, tells him he's a fucker and all this stuff. And he says, buy the ticket, take the ride.
Right.
It's gonna be a good one. So she tries to get her boss on the phone. Boss isn't answering. So she goes up and sits with Callie. And Callie's not having a good trip, guys.
No.
She's having a bad trip. Callie is hunkered down on the floor, staring at the wall, wide-eyed, because they can see her. They can see her. Callie's really freaking out. And then I forget something else happened. Didn't something break through the glass or something like that?
I remember there being a little jump scare, but
yeah, there's a bit of a jump scare, and
I feel like the house shakes and maybe the lights.
Yeah. There's it's like there's something outside the house, and there's at one point Anne is happens to look out at a window, and there's a face or something that appears, and the glass shatters. And now's a good time to mention that when you do see what these things are, it's so fast you don't know you've seen it. Mm-hmm. They never just give you a full-on shot that lasts more than a second.
Oh, even trying to pause it. I talked about that the gas tank scene earlier.
Yeah.
Where I tried pausing that so many times and I couldn't get it to line up to get anything more than a blur. And I mean, you can still see a lot, but no, you never get the shot. And I tried really hard.
Yeah, and I looked at this kind of like Jaws, where you don't really see the shark for much of the movie.
Yeah.
And that's really what you have here is you have this being, this entity that you get glimpses of, but you really don't get anything until late, as far as anything that's close to being a good representation of it.
And I think that not knowing what it is, not being able to see and process it, definitely goes a long way for building up the dread that is, concurrent throughout the whole film. But you don't really get the sense that it's following them until this whole interaction at Blackburn's house. And it's not something that can be stopped, really. It's almost got this it follows kind of vibe where it just keeps coming. And so Anne and Callie are both freaking out. Thomas Blackburn comes upstairs. They're harshing his vibe, man. He's yelling at him, what the fuck is going on? Nothing is coming to get you. And then he looks down the stairs and sees a fucking shadow coming up the stairwell, and he closes the door, and he's fully freaked out. And this is where it gets kind of vague, because the lights go out, and we get a shot of Callie, and her eyes are blacked out, and she's vomiting this viscous red fluid. And then it cuts away to Anne and Thomas sometime later. They've both passed out. So Callie's gone.
Right.
We don't exactly know what happened there.
Oh, we also get a great line from Callie. She says they want to wear us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that line in itself is terrifying. Like, one, what the hell does that mean? Number two, like, what the fuck? But then when you get into the rest of the film, obviously, it comes to mean so much more. But what I wanted to say about it is, from a writing point of view, I love how it feels like a throwaway line that your drunk friend says.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The first time I watched it, that line just kind of bounced off me. I didn't even really get it. And then subsequent viewings, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's pretty terrifying. And the gravity of that statement becomes more pronounced as they start to uncover a little bit more. And at this point, you're just like, this is total chaos. All this weird shit's happening. How does this tie back to James? What is going on? And so Anne and Thomas become unlikely partners. They basically take off into the night to find Callie. And I recall, is there a moment when they're passed out that it cuts away to like more from that tape of the experiments?
After they get to Callie's house, you have that moment where you kind of, and in fact, that's actually the part with the extraction from the corpse. And
Okay.
It's I don't know why I'm doing air quotes. I guess I'm doing it for us, but not people who are listening. But the idea of the primary source.
Yes.
Because this chemical's in everything. I mean, as far as in living beings, but going straight to the pineal gland and extracting it and using it as formula is gonna, I don't know, it's gonna give you something special.
Yes.
But yeah, even the idea that I think in the video they made some comment about that the formula, the scientists didn't create the formula; they got the formula from otherworldly beings, some other beings, which is always the safest thing to do. Aliens, paranormal stuff. It's like, here's a recipe. I want you to follow it.
I mean,
been in the family for millennia.
The world's already fucked enough as it is. What could it hurt?
John, we got people out there trying to get computers to write all their shit for them. So I mean, this isn't really that far fetched.
Yeah, that's true. That's very
well.
True.
At least it was another carbon-based life form.
Was it though?
We
don't know if it's carbon-based. I mean, it could be ammonia-based.
In fairness, I think some authors or at least some people on X would be able to justify this. It still came from my brain, so it's fine if I write this. Unlike
I think
AI.
you don't even have to say authors. Probably the person who owns Twitter would probably say that they did this.
Oh my God, what if all of Elon's tweets are AI? That makes so much more sense. Sorry, I've derailed this.
No, it totally does. I mean, it would. I'm not saying it would redeem the man, but it would certainly just kind of ease my mind a little bit.
It just makes things way more sense.
It was all AI generated.
Man.
So Thomas and Anne take off into the night. Guys, might have to help me out here. Is this? Do we go to the scene where they're just kind of chilling in the car and talking, like they've pulled off the side of the road? Or
yeah, because they were like peeing, which was funny because she's peeing on one side, he's peeing on the other, and it throws you back to that moment where he gets arrested for peeing. Which one of the cool lines that he gives, which it's when you really dig into it, it's kind of profound and it's kind of worrying, which is, when you're innocent, you can get away with anything. And I just started thinking, I was like, if you're innocent, you're not getting away with anything. You didn't do anything. But the idea that he's put in his mind that the rules that he's set up in his head, as far as like, I can pee in my yard if I want to. I don't care if anybody else is there. This is my yard. According to my mind, I'm not doing anything wrong. But that gets into a whole lot of other things that would be going on there. But yeah, they pulled off
really fast.
And peed. Oh yeah,
really fast on the peeing. I find it fascinating how that in itself becomes a social commentary of like, where do laws stop being laws? Because when he says that he pees in his yard and he gets arrested, right? Then he's peeing outside and you're like, well, yeah, that's our guy. And then they show her peeing outside and you're like, well, of course she is. You've been out here all day. What else are you going to do? And I think it's interesting how this throwaway thing that's happening in this movie made me like look at like, where are these lines and like, how do they shift based on what we need or where we're at? And I don't know. I really wanted to talk about how peeing was somehow mentally stimulating to me. There you go.
I think that's an article for the New Yorker, James. You need to write that and send that to them.
I'm on it.
Do it.
I'm gonna look up a bunch of movies where people pee and try to break down the social significance of each one.
Please do. So they're peeing. They're chilling in the car, just trying to collect themselves. They don't know where Callie is, and so she's talking to Blackburn and talking about James, and that's where she shows him a picture of James that she's basically putting the blame on Blackburn because he's the one that sent James the chemical. And she tells him that James is missing, shows him a picture. Blackburn kind of is like, oh, so that's what this is about. Going back to that implied relationship that they had. And I forget what else they say, but basically so Anne is sitting in the front seat, Blackburn's sitting in the back seat. They're talking also about where Callie lives because maybe she went, maybe Callie went home. Okay. He says Callie lives in like one of those developments of McMansions outside of Reno, I think it is. And one of those developments that is also like just dead in the water because the market crashed, like put a stop to all the building. So that's that's where they're headed. But before that happens, Anne happens to look in, well, she's not even looking. We see a face pop up in the rear view, the side view mirror. It's distorted. It looks like it's got folds of skin wrapped around the face. It's very brief, but you see it in the red brake lights. And she freaks out. It's a jump scare, but then it pans over to Blackburn, who's sitting in the back seat, and his eyes are whited out, and he's got fucking blood coming out of them. And he can't talk. It's like he's seizing almost. And why the hell is this happening? Is it the chemical? It must be. So she hops in the driver's seat. They take off toward Reno. They get there, empty housing development. Thomas guides her to the right place. He gives her a radio so they can talk to one another. And what follows is probably one of the funniest fucking exchanges in the whole movie, to me anyway. Out of nowhere, while she's walking down this empty street in an undeveloped neighborhood toward a house that looks like it hasn't been finished, to find what happened to their friend, Thomas Blackburn chooses this moment to ask her Anne if she's ever read any H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah. It was so out of I wouldn't even say it's out of place. It was just kind of like,
but
what's this in the script?
she
there
even comments
was
on it. Go ahead,
I
James.
just want to throw out this dumbass story really fast. There was a time that my wife and I got stuck at an airport with a huge layover, and I had like one of those portable DVD players with me, right? But the only movie I had was We Are Marshall. And I don't know if you've ever seen people in an air terminal catch you watching We Are Marshall, but it does not go over well. So I feel like maybe Thomas is just stupid like me.
So I've never seen We Are Marshall. I know nothing about it.
I know there's a
It's,
plane crash in it.
Yeah. It's a
Oh,
whole
God.
football
Okay,
team that dies in
yeah.
a plane crash. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I probably would have looked at you the same way too.
But then I look at Thomas and I'm like, I feel like he's fucking with her on purpose. Like he doesn't, he knows he didn't give her anything. So I think maybe he thinks it's fine. Like whatever's happening to me is because I took it. I think he's fucking with her, but I don't know.
I also like to think that this is his only way he knows how to relate to this situation, relay the situation to her in a way that she might understand, because in his mind, she's kind of a muggle in this situation. She's the uninitiated. She doesn't really get it. And, maybe that's why he brings this up. I don't know. In any case, it's a fucking hilarious moment because he starts telling her about From Beyond, which this is clearly an homage to. And about how, in the story of From Beyond, Arthur Tillinghast creates a resonator that's like a giant tuning fork, and it stimulates with sound waves. It stimulates our pineal gland and allows us to see other realities. But what, and spoilers for a story that's, almost 100 years old at this point, the big twist is that he realizes at the end that not only he can see them, but they can also see him. And that's kind of the big takeaway with From Beyond, which, as an aside, check out Stuart Gordon's version of From Beyond, starring Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton. Came out in the 80s. Fantastic film. Way hornier than the original story, but still.
I can't believe you don't think a Lovecraft story is horny enough. My goodness. Oh, wait. That's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. So Anne goes into Callie's house. She's got her flashlight. She makes her way down to the basement, which is apparently Callie's laboratory, where, she synthesizes her own DMT-19, presumably to sell. And, it must be a good market. So she finds something on the computer, and it's not just the security stuff. She finds something else. I thought, was it a map? She finds a map, right?
All I'm thinking about is like the actually seeing Callie on video.
Yeah,
me too.
but I'm pretty sure Anne finds the map because that's how they find out where to go into the desert to the bunker.
That makes sense.
So she finds a map, but she also notices, one, she ends up watching part of that video that we've already seen where the figure is reciting the molecular structure. And she looks over and there's the molecular structure written on a chalkboard, very science class, here's the C1N1, blah, blah, blah. But then she notices the security camera feeds and recorded movements. And like 10 minutes before Anne got there, Callie arrived and decided to go hide under the stairs. The same room that Anne is now standing in. So she's talking, she's trying to get Thomas on the radio. He's not answering. I just realized I skipped over a very funny line where he asks her if they can leave now because it's cold. And he's like, it's cold and my eyes are bleeding.
Yeah.
So there's a scary moment where Anne basically like books it out of the basement. While she's running up the stairs, this deformed claw reaches for her. Which, you know, they telegraph that heavily, but still it's pretty freaky. So she gets back to the car. There's a, you know, Blackburn scares the shit out of her because he fell asleep in the back seat.
Right.
And they take off
good.
again into the night toward this bunker, the location on this map that Callie had. And the whole idea is that this is where the broadcast is coming from. You know, this is where the station with the little girl is broadcasting from. It also was where the experiments from MK Ultra in this particular film, you know, take place. It's where, you know, they see the same room numbers and everything. And Thomas starts to talk about things in here like he's familiar with them. But when Anne asks him how he knows this, he just doesn't really give her an answer. So Thomas has a gun on him that he pulled from his glove box of his car, because you never know what you're going to run into in an abandoned government bunker in the middle of the desert in the middle of the night. And they come across this room that basically has all this broadcasting equipment and this gigantic tank full of some kind of weird ass liquid. And there's a little porthole in the side of the tank. And when Anne kind of leans down to look into it, a face like bubbles up in the glass and like blinks at her. It's got black eyes and shit. There's something inside this tank that is never explained. And did they bring the canister of gas with them from the car? I don't recall if they found it.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they get it out of the trunk.
Yeah. So they have a can
Thomas
of gas.
He's like, let's burn all this shit down or whatever.
They're gonna burn it all down. But before that happens, all the equipment starts to turn on and the broadcast begins to play. They try to leave, and there's something outside in the hallway. So shit's going south real fast. There's this figure kind of lurching down the hallway toward them. We see it only for a second. It's disfigured. It's weird Lovecraftian thing. So they end up barricading themselves in the broadcast room with this tank with the weird swimmer thing in it. And Thomas begins to have another seizure. His eyes, are bleeding again. And he realizes that they're trying to come through because he's ingested the drug. He understands that in, this entity, whatever it is, if a connection's been made to a person, it can basically come through, which loops around to it wants to wear us. So basically, we are the gateway or the doorway if you're a Stephen King fan. It's very much in the same sense, like that story, I Am the Doorway. These things are coming through to inhabit our bodies, hence wear us like a suit. And Thomas understands that's what's happening. And he says, I'm sorry, Anne, and he shoots himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the end of Thomas Blackburn. But Anne is still in the bunker, locked in this room with this, this tank, and it's still broadcasting, and she's got to do something. So she makes her escape because they left the can of gas. She ends up running into that thing again, and it's wearing a familiar shirt. We don't really get to see it until after this, but it's got some familiarity to it. Where have we seen this before? She gets the gas can, she runs back, she shatters the glass, pours the gas in, sets it alight, and the whole thing blows up. Did I miss anything there?
No.
Okay, cool. So we then see Anne battered, bruised, burns on her skin. She's had a hell of a night. She's kind of making her way out of the ashes of this, destroyed control room. And she sees the clothes left on the ground. And it's the shirt that James was wearing in his video. So it's been James this whole time who's been following them. She kind of makes it out. It's the end of the movie. Things are winding down. It's playing, triumphant music and all that shit. And she makes it outside of the bunker. And then it cuts to the police station. Her boss is running into the building. Anne is in an interrogation room, the same interrogation room that James's friend was being interrogated in, but there's no cop threatening to fuck her world or anything like that. And her boss is like telling her, the journal will take care of any legal fees, blah, 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 all this stuff. And, she's like, are you okay? Yes, I'm okay. And then she's trying to process everything that's happened. And, they have a hug. And then the next thing you know, the number station starts playing out of the intercom speaker in the interrogation room. And Anne is freaking out because, no, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. You got to get us out of here. You got to stop this. She turns around and there's her boss. Face all distorted, black ooze coming out of her eyes and her nose and her mouth. Anne screams, and then it cuts to black. And that's when it starts the credit sequence, but there's still some more stuff for you to see, and it's sequences of James's friend touching him on the shoulder. It's sequences of, I can't remember if it shows Blackburn and Anne, or no, it wouldn't show Blackburn and Anne. It shows, her boss and her having that hug. And the insinuation is that it also moves by touch.
Mm.
So it's not just ingesting that. If you've ingested the chemical, you can pass it on to someone else through touch.
Which explains why you don't have to take the drug for something to happen to you. Like
exactly
James's friend, and of course, Blackburn
and herself,
reveals
because she never took the drug.
Yeah, it's like, I never gave it to you. I was bullshitting. I never put in your drink.
Yeah, I missed that important fact. Yeah, sorry, folks.
Which, by the way, makes so much sense to me, because I feel like this drug is hard to make, or at least, like you don't have a bunch to just be wasting on random people who show up. So I was actually glad he didn't give it to her.
I mean, there's no shortage of cadavers in the world.
True. And we can always make more.
Yeah. So also, while the credits are rolling, we see more outtakes from presumably the bit of footage that was recovered by their forensic specialist.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out to be that the guy that we've seen them experiment on earlier in the film, he's now being administered shock treatment. And he's totally unconscious, and all these government men are standing over him, and they're basically shutting the program down. They can't have any of this coming back to them. And they're basically just going to abandon this guy and release him to the streets. And his name, they reveal, is Thomas Blackburn. Before he became famous as this highly volatile individual and writer with a unique perspective. And
I
then
like how
it
they
plays
go
out.
out of their way to say that too. They're like, we don't know what the long-term consequences will
Yeah.
be. And like, I thought that was so great. There's no telling if this guy will be on his roof shooting things and peeing in his front yard.
Yeah. Or, scaring the hell out of people at a press junket.
Look, that'd be one hell of a side effect listing if this were a regular pharmaceutical. Those who take this drug, those who take DMT will find themselves peeing in their front yard, shooting at people, drowning journalists, drugging or attempting to drug political officials, and
May also
doing
find
crazy shit.
themselves subject of conversations on podcasts hosted by nerds online.
Side effects may include suicide.
Yes.
I found it was, I mean, I don't know if they did this intentionally by having the Hunter S. Thompson coded character to go out roughly the same way that Hunter S. Thompson did. But I just remember his final words, at least his wife passed on his final words, which were, I think I'm done now.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? Like, what kind of... And her reaction was like, I'm not surprised. That's kind of what I figured that was how he was going to go out. It was going to be on his terms. It was going to be somebody else making the decision, whether that's pulling the plug in an old age or, car accident or anything like that. He's just kind of like, I've seen enough. I'm good. I'm done.
The only way he would go out. And to have his ashes shot out of a cannon, no less.
Yeah.
Which I think it was Johnny Depp who did that, actually. Because I know they got to be pretty close during Fear and Loathing, they were filming.
I utterly hate that I'm picturing Captain Jack Sparrow instead of Johnny Depp.
Right.
Like he's on a pirate ship with a cannon, like it just makes too much sense. But no, one of the celebrities I was really affected by who killed themselves was Chester Bennington from Linkin Park.
Mm-hmm.
And every time people are like, "Oh, we never saw this coming," I'm like, "You've never listened to Linkin Park." I see.
Yeah.
That's like one of my signs that my depression is bad is that I'm listening to a shitload of Linkin Park. My wife is always like, "Doing all right?" as soon as that starts, and yeah, so I look at Hunter and I look at him and even Robin Williams, and I'm like, I don't see this ending any other way. And I'm not trying to judge them or say I understand these things, but it also just makes so much sense to me that, I think sometimes that is the only way. Sadly.
Okay. I had to look this up. Johnny Depp apparently, or at least allegedly, used $3 million of his own money to pay for the funeral and the whole celebration and everything and firing off the cannon. And I think the video of him firing off the cannon is on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
We've taken a dark road.
Well, hopefully nothing jumps out at us.
But I mean,
this is so, it is so telling about how art can reflect real things that take place, whether we're talking about the MK Ultra program, Hunter S. Thompson's life, journalism, anything like that. But what really got me, and I wrote this down, disposable pieces, disposable people, disposable pieces. And the whole idea that you're using people, whether it's this program, whether it's the Tuskegee experiments, whether it is any number of government experiments that take place. And I don't mean just the U.S. government, but governments in general. They can take the people that are, in a sense, disposable, or they're willing to participate in this because they might need to, right? And when I was watching this, the one joke that everybody in the military had, or everybody who had been in the military, as far as going on the different Facebook pages and things like this, when COVID came out and when the COVID vaccine had come out, the veterans pages were so in everybody's ass. They're like, why are you afraid to take the COVID vaccine? Do you remember all the shit they used to give us when we went?
Yeah.
Like it was an experimental medication at the time. It was the nasal flu shot. And everybody I was with, they're like, should we take this? And we all looked and we're like, we don't have a fucking choice. And I recall like the TAC officers, they were like, it's like, I'm going to count to 3. You're going to put because it was a syringe. You're going to put the syringe in your nose. You're going to hold one nostril. You're going to push and inhale. Then you're going to put it in the other nostril and inhale. And they gave us an incentive, which was basically, you guys don't have to do PT for the next 2 days. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what the fuck did you guys give us? Because normally a PT like day where we don't have to do anything is because you gave blood. So you got a day where you don't have to give PT. You got 24 hours. You can't do PT. For those who don't, physical training.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, no, you guys have 2 days off of PT. Half of the unit got sick. And they all blamed it. Like, well, I took the thing and looking into it, it was a live virus. So it was a live virus that was given to us to build up the antibodies for it, with flu faster than the dead specimen that was being put in. And I don't recall getting sick, but I know I wasn't sick for several years after that fucking thing. I don't know what else might have happened to me. But hey, James, in about 20 years, you and I need to go into the desert and go do some shit.
Yeah.
I'm busy that day. I'm sorry.
Damn. I didn't even tell you what day, and you're a busy man 20 years from now. But yeah, it's weird how like even the MK Ultra experiments themselves, you have this done on. There were so many ethical violations. Technically using this, if this had been something that was implemented, it's violating the Geneva Convention. You're going to drug a detainee, not saying that we haven't done that before, but you're going to drug a detainee to confess to a crime, or you're going to drug somebody in order to get them to do something they otherwise normally wouldn't do. That's a violation of Geneva Conventions. But the fact that there were some people who were so consumed with global positioning, spheres of influence, that, hey, we need to go ahead and sacrifice a few people. We don't really know what this drug is going to do, but we're going to do what we can with this drug if it works the way we want it to work. So horrible, horrible people. I mean, you brought in Nazis to continue the program. So
yeah,
what do we expect?
I Googled what I said about Ted Kaczynski and MK Ultra, and according to the Washington Post, that is true.
Oh, okay.
He took part in a experiment run by a Harvard psychologist that was backed by the CIA and is believed to have been part of MK Ultra.
And while you were talking, I also Googled something. I put nasal flu shot and hit images thinking this would be horrific and I shouldn't do it. And then all the pictures were children. So don't do it. That's just what I want to tell everyone.
God.
Well, yeah, I got it.
Not what I expected.
I got it done in 2006.
I wanted to see how long the needle was.
Oh no, it's not a needle. It's just a syringe.
Oh, it's just like a vapor thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the same thing you give kids, oral medication with.
All right. Well, that makes the kid thing less creepy because it just like showed it like in their nose.
Oh no, it's not a needle. It's not a needle at all.
I'm just adding to my own terror over here.
No, it's no different than like the nasal mist thing. It's just that it's in a syringe as opposed to the little bottle, and you just push it and then push the other side, and you're done. But yeah, I didn't get sick for a while after that first time I was sick due to that.
I have a bit of PTSD when it comes to, having to put stuff up your nose because I got COVID back before the vaccines were widely available. And ironically, I got COVID the one time I left my house because I had to take my wife to get her vaccine, her first vaccine shot. And we had to travel like an hour away in order to get it. And I caught it while we were out. And so I was sicker than I've ever been in my entire life. And we went through CVS, the drive-through CVS, and for a test. And I had to give it to myself.
Oh,
And, never done this before in my life. And they're like, okay, so you just got to insert it about an inch into your nose. And I'm looking at this thing like, you want me to insert this and tickle my fucking brain with this thing? Are you out of your goddamn mind? So I did it, and I sneezed while it was in there. There was blood. It was pretty gross, and I can't really stand to have things anywhere near my nose since then. So thanks for freaking me out, Don. Appreciate that.
You see what you did? You sent us both down different terror lanes here. Jeez.
Well, I'm a horrible person, I know. Well, they reference, not that this was an actual program, but they reference the social fears that people already had, like during the Vietnam War. Because we're talking about 53 through 73. So it's like that prime period where the government is looking for different ways to deal with what they saw as problems. I mean, Nixon has the war on drugs because he wants to undercut the civil rights movement, undercut the hippie movement, the women's, Nixon was a piece of shit. Not as much of a piece of shit as Reagan, but see, James got me to say it. But
it took way longer than I expected.
I know. But there were Vietnam veterans that were talking about how there was word, as far as just the rumors that get passed around within the military. There was this push, and it even got captured in the film Platoon, where there's this conversation between these two troops, and they're like, I'm not smoking grass, man. I'm not smoking that shit. And they're like, why? And the guy responds and says, I heard, and of course, when you're in the military, you hear it from somebody in your unit, somebody in your company, somebody, throughout, somebody that you come in contact with. I heard the VC are putting chemicals in the marijuana. So any marijuana you find here, don't smoke, because it's going to turn you into a pacifist. And that,
sorry.
No, dude, that was one of the things.
Is that what happened to me?
When they had that in the movie, I started laughing when I was an adult because I saw actual reports about these fears that, smoking marijuana is going to do this to you. It's going to do that to you. And the Viet Cong are trying, with the help of the Chinese, the Viet Cong, which is, again, a funny way to set it up. The Viet Cong, with the help of the Chinese, are lacing marijuana plants so that when any GIs decide that they're going to smoke, it's going to turn them into a pacifist. So you couple that with, this is the US's goal with this. I can't speak for any other country, but this is the US's goal with this type of drug treatment, LSD, MK Ultra, the different types of chemical additives to things. We want to make sure that if we have access to this, maybe we spray your crops and turn your people into pacifists, or make your people a lot more passive, so we can install somebody, or we could do some nefarious shit, or we could just prevent somebody from doing what we don't want them to do. Cold War, man,
so
it was
crazy to me.
Well, one of the plans was to give
gummy bears real fast.
Yes, gummy bears. But one of the aims, and I think this was in the Freedom of Information Act papers, there was one out of 600 plus attempts, but one of these attempts to kill Fidel Castro involved giving him some marijuana that was laced. It was such a high dosage, it was going to drive him crazy. So that was another plan. I mean,
that was
the CIA is not short on any plan.
Ever been.
It's like we tried the whole exploding cigar thing. It didn't work on them, which that was something they tried.
Pacifist.
But did they come at these with like the confidence Anne had? Like,
God, must have like
exploding cigars. My God.
Anything but pacifism. It's like, they the same regard. I'm sure they also were telling people it will turn you into a communist.
Yeah.
No, it's just going to make you hungry and sleepy. That's it.
That's pretty much it. Not going to see any
I have
monsters,
18 minutes until these kick in.
Oh
Nice.
my God. I guess we better get to the movies then. I mean, I don't have anything in my notes. I'm done.
I don't think I had anything I wanted to add still. Todd, do you have anything that you still want to cover before we go to movie Rex?
No. I mean, that's my riveting recounting of Banshee Chapter, and I hope, even though we have spoiled the shit out of it, that more people watch it. Like, it's not a perfect movie by any chance, but man, like, I think the best good bad movies have fantastic concepts. They just did not have perfect execution.
There is one thing in my notes that I skipped. Well, I guess I shouldn't say skipped. It's all throughout the movie. But did either of you notice all the drug posters or the anti-drug posters in different scenes? And it was just kind of like, huh. And even
I noticed a couple, but I didn't know it was an ongoing thing.
They were all in the interrogation room with the police.
Yeah, they were all over on every wall, and it was just weird because I'm thinking, like, an interrogation room doesn't look like that. I mean, you're not gonna, and I'm just saying, because you're not gonna have it decorated. There aren't going to be walls with posters. That's going to be like in a break room, or like in the front of the building, or for the people who are taking a tour of the police department. Or a school.
Yeah, I was going to say they probably shot it in a school.
I'll leave these up. That'll be great. Man.
Well, what's fascinating, they shot this movie in 28 days.
That is incredible.
Wow.
And apparently, the reason why they had so little time, or one of the reasons why they had so little time, is because the director couldn't decide on who was going to play the lead. And they auditioned like an ungodly number of women to play that role.
Oh, wow.
Zachary Quinto is one of the producers, too.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
There's useless.
All right. Well, I suppose that brings us to movie Rex. So,
wait. Let me stop you, Jane, because you said, Todd, you brought up in the beginning of the film, when they have those video clips, those news clips and things like that, I love how something like this would make a conspiracy theorist, like, I don't know, they would just make them perk up a little bit more, because that portion where Clinton is apologizing, I'm like, this isn't about MK Ultra. That's about the Tuskegee experiments. But they use that video. Yes, the United States government did experiments on blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I know that apology. I know, because there are people to this day who think that the Tuskegee experiment was about giving somebody a disease, when the Tuskegee experiments were about, we found people with syphilis, we're just not going to treat them. We just want to see how bad syphilis can get.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Right. So again, disposable people. It's all about, we're going to, under the guise that we're going to help you, or we're going to study something that you do, and we're doing something completely different. So if anybody ever comes to you personally from the government, and you're going to be a test subject for something, they're not testing you for whatever you think they're testing you for. Hardly ever are.
Man, that's so fucked up, and yet so American. Not only will we not do anything, we're going to lie to you and say that we are. Like, wow. Huh.
Yeah.
It'd be too much work to actually run experiments on you. We'll just sit here and watch. Holy shit. And on that downer of a note, movie Rex. So if people liked this movie, what else should they watch? Todd, let's start with you.
So, I mean, the obvious is, if you want more Lovecraftian film, check out Stuart Gordon's From Beyond. It's a mid 80s film. Vastly different tone, but also involves more, the resonator concept and everything, and how it stimulates the brain. In the Mouth of Madness, of course, John Carpenter's classic from the mid-90s. That's probably my favorite Carpenter film. Prince of Darkness as well by John Carpenter. If you want more of the dread and cosmic, horror aspects. If you want more of the found footage-esque type of storytelling, maybe Devil's Pass, about Jesus Christ, I had it in my head and now it's gone. The Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia. Also a pretty decent flick. It's not perfect, but again, it's, I tend to give a lot of mediocre films a pass if they're a good concept. Yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Nice. I always do a double feature, and I wanted to go out of my normal area on this one. So the movie that I would suggest watching with this, I don't know if either of you have seen it. There's a 2015 documentary called The Brainwashing of My Dad. And The Brainwashing of My Dad. One? Yeah.
Okay.
It examines how media in the US has changed and looks at questions of who owns the airwaves, what rights listeners and watchers have, and the responsibility that the government should have to keep the airwaves fair, accurate, accountable. It basically follows the director as she wonders what the hell happened to her dad. He went from a Democrat who never had a mean word to say about anyone, as she says several times in the film, to listening to Rush Limbaugh every day on the way to work and then watching Fox News exclusively and hating everybody. I wouldn't say it's the best documentary ever, but I think it really helped me understand kind of what happened to my mom and some other people in my life, and how we become who we surround ourselves with. We become the media we ingest. We become the things that we let into our brains. And obviously both kind of work with mind control in a way, and both at the individual and the collective level as well, and how all of this can lead to fear, paranoia, violence, and division. So
nice.
I don't think you'd have a happy night at the end of watching these two as a double feature, but I think they do have a lot to go together. All right, Don, 420 films, no reason.
First, I'm going to say, again, fuck Ronald Reagan, because the reason why the news is that way is because of Reagan's administration.
Yes, fuck Ronald Reagan.
If you say that, you can lose your TikTok account, Don.
No, it's only if
I brought that up.
Only if I make another video about Satan himself. But by the way, I mean, it's true. Satan actually respects people. All right. So anyway, before everybody,
my shirt says Satan respects pronouns. Just throwing it out there.
Damn right.
I prefer verbs. You know why? Because Ronald Reagan is dead.
May he stay that way forever.
That's a very active verb, not passive in the slightest bit.
No. All right. So I'm going to start off with not a movie, but an episode. Cabinet of Curiosities, the episode The Viewing. American Ultra is more of a comedic look at the way this program works out. Dark and the Wicked, Bird Box, Devil's Candy, Daniel Isn't Real. A movie that for some reason I took a while to get around to, which is The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Because especially with that ringing in this movie, I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Something bad's about to happen. Of course it follows, but you mentioned that one, Todd. As Above, So Below, Wormwood, Bug with Ashley Judd and Michael Shannon, Shutter Island, Silence of the Lambs, another couple of Levine movies, and The Hills of Ice, because he was in that one as well. Limitless, Dexter, because the actress who plays Anne is in a season or two of that, but she's underrated. I didn't even recognize her because she has a British accent in this one, and on that show she was Ukrainian, and she did a very good job. Ice Cream Man, Jurassic Park, Identity from 2003, Talk to Me, the recent film. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so good. Film. So good.
The Crazies, either the original or the remake, because it's about the government is poisonous. Pontypool.
Yes.
Radios again. Okay. The Descent, Naked Gun 33 and a third. Jaws, Men in Black, and I just had another one and I lost it. Dang it. I should have said it when I was up there.
Well, I want to thank you for throwing out Pontypool, because Clay McLeod Chapman sends me $5 every time we mention his episode covering that movie. So
what,
that's not. Yeah.
Pontypool?
Yeah.
Pontypool.
Yes, that's the one. Kill me? Kiss me? Kill me? What? All right. Clay doesn't really send me money, but he could. Yeah, Clay, if you're listening, feel free to send me money.
He should.
I forgot. Did I say Men in Black?
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. I just wanted to make sure.
All right, Todd, that brings it back to you, man. You want to tell everyone where they can find you on social media while it exists? And
yes, social media, for better or worse. You can find me on Blue Sky. Just search Todd Keisling. That's Keisling. I'm also on Instagram, TikTok, and I am on Twitter. I refuse to call it X.
There's no reason to.
No, I am on Twitter, but the way that site's going, probably not for much longer, honestly.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. My cat is being an asshole. Stop.
Sweet.
So he's being a cat.
Star.
Yeah, he's being a cat. So yeah, you can find me there on social media. Also, my website, toddkeisling.com. And you can also find me on Amazon. If you search my name, you can find all my books. So,
and buy all his books.
And buy all my books. Yes, that would be great.
That's right. Well, awesome. Sincerely, thank you. I had not heard of this film, as I said, and
thanks for having me, guys. I mean, I've been waiting to get on the show for a while, so I'm glad we could finally nail down a time.
I'm so bad at that.
It's okay.
It's terrible.
It's okay. I forgive you this time.
Well,
this
awesome.
This time.
7559773. All right. So, I guess that wraps it up for another week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am Dawn 314159265.
I like pie.
3 5 9.
Of course. I just want to see how far he'll go.
3 2 3 8 4 6 2.
All right. We'll see you next week here at thedecronama.com.
8 3 2 7 9 5 0 2 8